Imagine a breathtaking masterpiece of the world's most beloved woman, deliberately locked in a pitch-black storage room for 25 agonizing years, hidden away simply because her lingering ghost completely terrified the woman who replaced her. Last week, inside the heavily guarded walls of Windsor Castle, Prince William and Princess Anne executed a flawlessly planned, devastatingly precise midnight operation to drag Princess Diana's official portrait back into the blinding light, and the immediate, violent fallout shattered Queen Camilla's entire reality. If you want to know exactly how William pulled off the ultimate quarter-century revenge and absolutely broke his stepmother's institutional power, smash that like button and subscribe right now, because the sinister secrets we are exposing today will literally make your stomach drop. To truly understand the sheer magnitude of this historical strike, we have to expose the darkest days of 1997. While the entire planet openly wept for the people's princess, the atmosphere behind those Iron Palace gates was chillingly cold and incredibly ruthless. Within hours of Diana's tragic death in that Parisian tunnel, before the British public had even processed the catastrophic loss, the scramble to aggressively erase her memory had violently begun. Camilla didn't just quietly move into the sacred spaces Diana once called home. She launched a terrifying, systematic campaign of absolute erasure. Diana had loved keeping fresh, hand-picked flowers throughout her private rooms. Camilla explicitly ordered household staff to remove every single arrangement and burn them. She didn't just throw them in the trash, she viciously had them incinerated. Then she turned her attention to the very bedroom where Diana had slept, where she had cried alone in the dark, and where she had held her 2 young boys. Camilla ordered that room to be permanently locked and sealed off, treating the princess's memory like a shameful, toxic stain. Piece by piece, Diana's image was quietly scrubbed from the royal residences. For over 2 decades, the most famous royal woman of the modern era was intentionally missing from the Hall of Matriarchs at Windsor, the most sacred ceremonial wall reserved for the women who built the monarchy, simply because Camilla found her presence too uncomfortable. But sitting in the shadows of this horrific erasure was a teenage boy quietly absorbing every devastating blow. When 15-year-old Prince William walked behind his mother's coffin in front of the watching planet, his face was a mask of pure stoicism. But internally, an absolute inferno was raging. The devastating turning point that hardened William's soul forever came when he finally learned about a highly classified note written by his mother to her solicitor, Lord Mishcon, in October of 1995. In that chilling letter, written 2 years before her death, Diana explicitly stated her terrifying belief that her husband was actively planning to have her killed in a staged car accident involving brake failure, leaving him completely free to marry Camilla. When a teenage William realized what his mother had written, and then watched Camilla systematically erase her legacy, a cold, unbreakable anger consumed him. He didn't lash out or scream to the press. Instead, he did something infinitely more dangerous. He politely smiled for the flashing cameras, shook her hand at Christmas, and quietly spent the next 25 years meticulously plotting the exact moment he would finally strike back. But William was not the only senior royal quietly walking the palace corridors with a massive, unhealed wound directly connected to Camilla. He found the ultimate, devastating ally in the one person whose absolute hatred for the new queen ran even deeper and started decades before Diana ever entered the picture: Princess Anne. To understand this explosive alliance, you must look back to 1973. Before Camilla ever married Andrew Parker Bowles, he was deeply entangled in a serious, committed romantic relationship with Anne. Marriage was actively being discussed, but the ruthless royal institution brutally shut it down because he was Catholic. Anne, ever the dutiful daughter, was forced to painfully step aside. Camilla immediately swooped in, took the man Anne loved, and Anne was forced to sit in the church pews, smiling for the cameras, watching the woman who stole her future walk down the aisle. Anne buried that agonizing heartbreak deep inside, only to watch that exact same woman spend the next several decades operating as a secret mistress who systematically destroyed her brother's marriage, broke Diana into pieces in front of the entire world, and eventually manipulated her way into Buckingham Palace with a stolen crown on her head. For 50 long years, Anne waged a terrifyingly silent Cold War. She refused to bow to her, coldly informed her at a private luncheon that she was merely the king's wife and not the queen, and quietly waited for the perfect moment to strike. That moment finally arrived with a 30-second phone call from Prince William. He had spent years meticulously preparing this exact operation. William didn't just angrily hang a painting, he played a 20-year institutional chess game. He took exhaustive meetings with historians, verified decades of portrait placement protocol, and checked every single legal precedent to ensure that once this portrait was on the wall, there was absolutely no legal route for anyone on earth to reverse it. When he finally called his aunt, Anne simply replied that she couldn't wait to see the look on Camilla's face. The execution was an absolute masterclass in tactical deception. William's highly loyal team deliberately scheduled Camilla for an official royal engagement outside of London, purposely putting her on a train to get her entirely out of the building. While she was blissfully unaware, miles away, the Hall of Matriarchs at Windsor was abruptly closed to the public. Only a handful of intensely vetted, utterly loyal staff were permitted inside. There was absolutely no press release, no official diary entry, and no warning. In the early evening, the stunning portrait of Princess Diana was carefully carried into the sacred gallery. The staff moved incredibly slowly, handling the wrapped canvas with the profound reverence you reserve for something that has already been hurt once and absolutely does not deserve to be hurt again. And standing right there in the center of the room, refusing to rely on secondhand reports, was Princess Anne. She didn't need to be there for any legal or institutional reason. But after waiting 50 agonizing years to watch Camilla's toxic legacy finally shatter, she was absolutely determined to see the historic moment with her own two eyes. As the protective wrapping slowly fell to the floor, Diana's radiant face was finally exposed to the Windsor light for the first time in over 2 decades. Within 90 intense minutes, Princess Diana's official portrait was permanently bolted to the wall, placed directly beside the late Queen Elizabeth II. 2 historic women side by side, one who reigned with an iron grip for 70 years, and one who never got the chance to reign at all, standing exactly where they should have been from the very beginning. The grand, echoing gallery went completely dead silent. Multiple insiders who were standing in the room reported that nobody cheered, nobody clapped, and nobody made a grand, self-congratulatory speech. They just stood there, staring in absolute awe at a breathtaking painting that should never have been locked away. Then, breaking the heavy silence, Princess Anne delivered 5 unscripted, absolutely devastating words that were never part of William's meticulously crafted legal plan. Staring at the beautiful face of a young girl she had watched the brutal institution completely destroy, Anne quietly muttered, "Diana belongs here, always did." She spoke in the present tense, as if the last 25 years of Camilla's desperate reign were nothing more than a pathetic administrative error that the family had finally gotten around to correcting. Across London, Camilla was fast asleep, completely unaware that her stepson and sister-in-law had just permanently detonated her heavily curated royal reality. When she returned to Windsor the following morning, expecting a routine day, she walked straight into a waking nightmare. The moment she was informed of the portrait's permanent installation, her reaction was visceral, immediate, and violently explosive. She didn't retreat to compose herself. She went completely rigid with blinding fury right in the middle of the corridor in front of terrified household staff. She began screaming out aggressive demands, ordering the portrait to be ripped down immediately, demanding an emergency confrontation with William, and furiously demanding the exact names of every single staff member involved so she could ruthlessly destroy their careers. Every single one of her furious demands was coldly and flatly denied. For the first time in 25 years, the woman whose quiet preferences had dictated palace policy was rendered completely and utterly powerless inside her own home. In a state of absolute frantic desperation, she ran straight to King Charles, demanding that he forcefully intervene and fix the massive humiliation. Charles had spent decades violently fighting the institution, his own fiercely loyal sons, and the deeply hostile British public to forcefully drag this woman onto the throne. All it would have taken was one simple phone call from the reigning monarch, and the painting would have vanished by lunchtime. But as Camilla stood there shaking with unhinged rage, Charles looked at her and then did the most devastating thing imaginable. He remained completely silent. He didn't make a single call. After a lifetime of getting it disastrously wrong, the king finally chose the untouchable legacy of his son and the sacred memory of the woman he had severely wronged, leaving Camilla isolated and shattered.